Cause of death in it. His remarks were, "I've nothing to worry about, you've nothing to worry about, and anybody wants to inspect this book can do."
These were very serious matters that you were raising with him, albeit in a roundabout sort of way. What was his attitude when you raised it?
Friendly, which was, I was surprised a bit at that. It was very friendly. I would have thought he might have hit the roof actually that I wasn't making an accusation.
We were just concerned about the actual number of deaths, and that's what we was pointing out, really.
Did he seem surprised that you come to see him about that?
Not at all, no.
Did that surprise you?
Yes.
Dr. Shipman's surgery was in Market Street, in the centre of Hyde. Across the road from his practice is the Brook surgery, whose doctors were often asked to countersign cremation forms when Dr. Shipman's patients had died. Cremation forms always have to be signed by a GP from another practice. They have to discuss the case with the patient's GP and look at the body. In February 1998, one of the Brook GPs went to the funeral directors to examine a body. She was taken aside by Debbie Banbrough, one of the undertakers, for a discreet word.
She was concerned about the number of deaths of Dr. Shipman's patients that they'd attended recently. She was also concerned about the way in which the patients were found. They were mostly female, living on their own, found dead sitting in a chair, fully dressed, not in the nightclothes lying ill in bed.
At the same time, the Brook doctors had noticed a steep rise in the number of cremation forms they were being asked to sign by Shipman. The Brook doctors decided to investigate how many of his patients were dying at home, compared to their own.
The Brook surgery looks after 9,800 patients, and for that number of patients we had 14 deaths in a year. Now Dr. Shipman's practice we knew was somewhere approaching 3,500 patients, yet for 3,500 patients he had sent us 41 requests for cremation forms, compared with our total death rate of 14 for nearly 10,000 patients.
When we discovered that his rate of cremations was 3 times our total death rate in the year 1997, I think we then began to think the unthinkable.
By March 1998, 6 months before his arrest, Shipman was close to being found out. The recent steep rise in deaths amongst his elderly patients was attracting attention, and the way they all seemed to die had also been spotted. The Brook GPs decided to contact the local coroner.
I contacted the police straight away. In fact, I went personally to a meeting with the chief superintendent. I think I'm right in saying that day, it may have been the following day. We discussed it fully, what had been said to me, and he immediately detailed a detective inspector to carry out the investigation.
The police decided it was too sensitive to talk to relatives of dead patients. Instead, they decided to check the medical records of patients who died in the previous 6 months, the very records that Shipman had been faking.
The DI asked the local health authority to draw the medical records for those individuals and to see whether the cause of death that was given by Dr. Shipman accorded with the medical history of the individual patient. They concluded that in actual fact it did.
But did it not occur to anyone that Dr. Shipman himself had altered those records to create himself an alibi?
It obviously does now. Whether it did at that stage, I'm not aware.
Why not question the relatives, because that's where the evidence would have lain?
Because before we moved to that stage, we needed some confirmation which would give us... we needed to be on some firm ground before we actually went and made this suggestion to relatives, because of the upset that it was going to cause them.
The evidence was there, just wasn't found.
Yes.
The undertakers and the doctors at the Brook surgery were reassured that Dr. Shipman was innocent of any wrongdoing. He had more deaths, they were told, because he had more older patients, and it had been a bad winter. The coroner was also told there was no evidence of any crime. But that wasn't the end of the matter.
My greatest regret is that there was this delay before he was eventually arrested and charged, because during that time, undoubtedly, other deaths occurred.
One of those other deaths was of Win Mellor, an outgoing, energetic 73-year-old, deeply involved in her local church. She'd been a patient of Shipman's for years. He'd nursed her husband when he died in 1989.
Dr. Shipman came out and he decided I had to send him to hospital. And my mum was downstairs, and as he came downstairs, I was in the front room, Mum was in the living room, and he turned to my mum was breaking heart, and he put his arms around Mum and held her. And that was the relationship that she had with Dr. Shipman.
2 years ago, Win Mellor had a new lease of life. She was going to fulfill a lifetime's ambition.
We had organised a trip to the Holy Land, and she was the very first person in the parish to put her name down for that trip.
To actually follow in Jesus Christ's footsteps, to go to the various places, she was living what's written in the Bible.
She was like a child looking forward to Christmas. She said, her own phrase, "All my life I've wanted to go to the Holy Land, and now I'm going."
But Win never made it to the Holy Land. In May 1998, 6 weeks after the police investigation ended, Dr. Shipman called at Win's house. When he left, she was dead. Shipman returned to the house later in the afternoon.
A neighbour, tea time, gets a knock on the door from Dr. Shipman, saying he's come to see Winifred Mellor. I can see her sat in the chair, and he thinks she's dead. They go into the house, and again they find Winifred Mellor dead in the chair.
From the house, Shipman phoned Win Mellor's daughter.
The phone went, and it was Dr. Shipman. He said, "Did you realise that your mother has been suffering from chest pains?" And I said, "No." He said, "She called this morning at surgery, and I came to see her this afternoon, and she refused treatment." So I said, "Well, I'll be up as soon as I can." He said, no, there's no need for that." So I said, "Has she gone to hospital?" And he said, "There's no point in sending her to hospital." Those were his words. And I just went silent then. And he didn't say anything neither. And then I just realised what he was not saying. And I said, "Do you mean my mother's dead?" He says, "I see you understand." He'd made me guess that my mum was dead.
After the unsuccessful police investigation, Shipman murdered Kathleen Grundy, Joan Melia and Win Mellor.
We've been in close liaison with those families. We've been honest and open with them, and they are fully aware of the first inquiry and the conclusions that it came to. We've shared that with them through our bereaved family liaison officers, and I have to say that they have been incredibly understanding of the position that the police found themselves in terms of the nature of the inquiry.
I'm very, very angry. From what I've been told, they didn't really want to, I suppose, upset anybody because it's such a sensitive issue. But to me, when you're talking about people dying unnecessarily, I think the police should have rigorously investigated it.
Linda Reynolds, the Brook GP who originally went to the coroner, is now terminally ill. She believes the police didn't take her concerns seriously.
The GP who raised concerns about Dr. Shipman's death rate says that when your officer came to see her to give Dr. Shipman the all clear, she was still unhappy. And she said to him, "Look, there's a body at the undertaker's. Do you want to investigate the death?" And he declined to do so.
I don't know anything about that. What I do know, so I mean, I genuinely don't know anything about that, so that's news to me.
It demonstrates, doesn't it, that your officer wasn't taking her concern seriously enough.
I don't accept that is it. I don't accept that is the conclusion you would draw from that.
She's asking him to go and examine a body because she's still worried
I'm sorry,
Dr.
I
Shipman is
I
killing people.
can't comment on the circumstances of that. I don't know about the circumstances of that.